welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
So you have recently returned in the last couple of months. First and foremost, what mood did you find there?
Well, I think they were very pleased with the success of the step they took in January in reaching out to the South Koreans. And then the strategy they've unveiled since then has been enormously successful. At the Olympics with the Charm Offensive, reaching out to the South, the success of the Southern Summit. So I think they are really feeling quite pleased with themselves and the progress so far.
And Donald Trump, how did that come in?
Well, they were very keen to study Donald Trump. When I was there in December, they were reading Art of the Deal and wanted to discuss the book and what it showed about the president. When I went back at the beginning of this year, they were reading Fire and Fury, all on PDFs, not buying the book itself, and trying to discuss what that told them about Trump too. So they've planned this very carefully. Since last November, December, they've had a clear strategy, and so far it's all about reaction on the side of the West to their initiatives.
So they really are leading this then?
They appear to me to be leading it. They appear to me to have a clear strategy, and they've had a series of surprises, things we didn't expect, and I think there'll be more surprises along the way.
So what is their end game?
I think what they want to try and do is to negotiate from a position of strength. They've developed their nuclear weapons so that they feel they have a nuclear deterrent. They're not begging the United States. They're not begging the South. But what they do want to do, I think, is get to a place where their people can be more prosperous, where they can open up economically, because sanctions and their own economic primitiveness is a real problem for them. If the regime wants to stay safe, it needs to develop that economy.
But not at any cost then, right? Because, you know, they have just started to say clearly, and you would know better than I, they've been keeping a good eye on what happens in the United States. They watch TV, they have access to satellite channels. And they've just come out with this sort of, as people are calling it, a cold shower over all of this hype. What do you think it is that's made them sort of get back into the hermit shell?
Well, as you say, they're very well informed. They monitor every day what's happening in the news in the West. They know exactly what's going on. And I think they objected to what they saw as an attempt to put them in a position of surrendering, making them look like they were going into the negotiations weak. And in particular, referring to Libya is a real red rag to them.
When you mean referring to Libya?
Well, when John Bolton raised the example of Libya as what should happen to North Korea, every time I've been to North Korea in the last 6 years, they've raised the case of Libya themselves. They've talked about Gaddafi and said, we are not going to end up like Gaddafi, dead. Give up his weapons of mass destruction, ending up dead. They are not proposing to do that. So if you refer to that, they feel you're doing it in order to force them onto the back foot. Then using strategic assets, using B-52s and other bombers in the exercise in the south, I think they thought also was outside of the rules, because they accepted the exercises, but actually using nuclear assets seems to them a provocation.
Oh, so you think it's that part of the exercise? Because I was confused, because they did seem to accept the, you know, the idea of annual exercises around these talks anyway. So you think it's that bit,
I think
the nuclear bit?
Clearly they've got this programme of trying to have a rhetorical ceasefire. President Trump has not been tweeting in an offensive fashion. They themselves have toned down their rhetoric on the United States, including domestically. If you look at the billboards in Pyongyang at the moment, they don't have the usual anti-American aggression. So they had thought they were in this rhetorical ceasefire, and then they see this Libya thing and they see the strategic assets, and they think the other side is trying to push them into a position of surrender.
And according to reports, it's clear that the Trump administration privately is saying to people, according to reports, I don't have this firsthand, that they feel that Pyongyang has actually surrendered to American might.
Well, I don't think Secretary Pompeo thinks that. If you look at his interviews and what he's saying, he's being very careful in what he says. He's choosing his words very carefully. He's not putting them on the back foot. He's not saying they're surrendering. He's showing respect to Chairman Kim, as he calls him. So I think he's trying very hard.
Chairman Un, as he called him.
You called him once, but he's got it right now. And he's been trying really hard, and I think that's the problem. And the Libya example is not anyway a good example. I worked on Libya, and Libya did not have nuclear weapons. Libya had some drums in the desert which had cascades in them. They hadn't even put them together. And even then it took us a very long time to get rid of them. Nuclear weapons are not something where you just pull the plug and take it away again. How do you take away the knowledge of how to make nuclear weapons?
Exactly, and actually former Ambassador Christopher Hill, who was the US negotiator during the six-party talks with North Korea, he said, you know, in Libya we could put all that they had into a two-car garage. I mean, it was very little compared to the enormous amount of acreage all over the country that North Korea has. So, let's say they do go into a deal, how are you even going to verify it? There aren't even enough inspectors, apparently, according to the experts.
Well, also think of the country. This is a huge country with very mountainous terrain, no real roads. So how on earth do you get around and explore all of this stuff? It's going to be enormously difficult to do. But I think the crunch will come on this issue of the staging, because nuclear weapons are not something you can get rid of overnight. The suggestion that they could all be shipped to the United States is nonsense. So we have to think about how do you stage it? Because I'm sure this summit will happen. I'm sure this summit will be a success. But the problem will come afterwards, when they get into the detail, when they're negotiating on the nitty-gritty. That's when it's going to run into difficulty. And you have to have a staged approach if you're getting rid of nuclear weapons. You can't do it immediately.
OK, so on what each side believes to be denuclearization, President Trump has said it means they get rid of their weapons. End of story. The North Koreans have said, well, it's denuclearization, and they're generally believed to mean, you know, comprehensive global denuclearization. And some have said it will be a disaster if President Trump goes there and expects the all maximalist position to win. Can I just play for you a couple of sound bites from real experts as to the potential differing opinions over denuclearization? Let's just listen. First, Wendy Sherman, the former negotiator.
It means quite a different thing than I think the President of the United States believes it means. And I don't think for one moment, at least at this point, that Kim Jong-un expects to destroy his nuclear weapons. I think he's looking for a very different kind of denuclearization.
So do you think that when he talks about denuclearization, that he is prepared under the right circumstances to dismantle, to give up his nuclear weapons?
I'm very skeptical. I don't believe it at all. The most important thing for Kim Jong-un right now is to be accepted as the leader of nuclear state. So that is his priority. That's why Kim Jong-un actually never said about denuclearization of North Korea.
We really induced North Korea to declare that they wanted to go for complete denuclearization. That is what comprehensive denuclearization. Now, devil is in detail, but the devil and detail should be worked out between President Trump and Mr. Kim Jong-un.
Pretty perspicacious.
Absolutely, and they're experts, and I'm not an expert in that sense on nuclear issues. But I have to say that Secretary Pompeo has been there twice, and he seems to be saying that there will be denuclearization. He is someone who's putting his credibility on the line here about this deal. He says that's what's on offer, so I think should take him at his word.
The US version of the, you know...
Yes, I mean, he knows what the US version is. He knows what the alternative might be. I mean, let's wait and see. As I say, there have been a whole series of surprises. Maybe we'll be surprised again. And if you think about it, the nuclear weapons are not actually a very good long-term guarantor of the security of North Korea. They know the United States could destroy them in one blow. Yeah. They do not have a second strike capacity. So it's a good way to get into a good negotiating position. It's not a long-term strategy for the regime. For the regime, they must have economic growth. They must have security guarantees that keep them safe. They want the American so-called hostile policy to be removed. If they get those sort of things, then maybe the real denuclearization, sort of denuclearization we mean, may be possible. All the experts have been wrong every step since November. Maybe they're wrong again on this.
All right, let's hope this summit does in fact take place, because talk is better than war, right? But what happens to the North Koreans? Are they looking at what Donald Trump has done about the Iran deal? Does it even matter to them? Does it affect their, you know, faith or whatever, trust in any kind of deal that the United States might come up with them?
No. Every time I go and talk to the North Koreans, I raise Iran and talk about the example. And they say, please don't talk to us about Iran. We are not Iran. Iran does not have a nuclear weapon. Iran does not have an ICBM. We are completely different. We don't care what happens in Iran. We care about our example. Funnily enough, when I talk to the Iranians, they say the same thing about North Korea.
OK, well, now I want to just switch tacks a little bit. You have been a career Foreign Service. You've been in the US Embassy, the British Embassy in the US. You've made relationships with all sorts of administrations going back to President Clinton. And it has been reported that you instructed then Ambassador Christopher Mayer on his appointment as British ambassador back in '97 to, quote, get up the arse of the White House and stay there. Do you stand by that comment?
Well, I didn't make the comment. Christopher's memory is somewhat... that very much sounds like Christopher's language. What I would have told him is to hug the Americans close, to stay close to the Americans. And that is one of the tragedies of our foreign policy in Britain at the moment. We've abandoned one pillar, the United States, and we abandoned another pillar, the European Union. We have neither pillar now. That's why we are condemning ourselves to irrelevance by Brexit by having a weak relationship with the United States.
It's going to be very difficult, as you say, to figure out how to punch above your weight, as you've always done, by having these two pillars. But I want to ask you about hugging close then. You've seen that President Macron has taken that advice. He hugged very close.
Took it a bit literally.
Maybe. Was that too literally? I mean, is that a safe political place for a European ally to be, hugging Donald Trump very close?
Well, clearly what President Macron tried to do was to trade on the personal relationship, to do the hugging, and then to make a speech in Congress where he berated the president on environmental issues, on nuclear issues, and so on. It didn't seem to work on Iran because the president still left the Iranian deal. He tried. I think it's a sensible policy of him to try and reach out to Trump. He understands that personal relationship works with the president. That is a sensible thing to try and do. It didn't work in this case, but maybe it will work later on. Maybe he's got some investment that will help persuade the United States to change its mind on crucial issues.
Really fascinating stuff. Jonathan Powell, thank you for your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.